America is respected, and our country is back, stronger than ever before. We're poised for an economic boom, the likes of which the world has never seen.
That was President Trump last night during an 18-minute year-end address to the nation. He spent much of those remarks attacking President Biden and praising his administration's economic policies, even as new CBS polling finds 63% of Americans believe the economy is in bad shape. All in all, it's been a big year for Washington. I don't have to tell you that. Republicans passed their massive tax and spending bill. President Trump's and Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, shrunk the size of the federal workforce. We went through the longest government shutdown in history, and Congress forced a vote to release the Jeffrey Epstein files, just to name a few. Let's bring in Leslie Sanchez and Joel Payne. Leslie is a CBS News political analyst and Republican strategist. Joel is a CBS News political contributor and chief communications officer for Move On. Leslie, the president tends to score high on immigration, but he's losing ground on the economy. What has he delivered on, and where does he need to make up ground?
I think the president has showcased that he took a very stark contrast from the previous administration. He talked about reform along the border, U.S. immigration policy, and it was a very stark contrast. If you consider where we were a year ago, the president has basically stopped the flood of contraband and certainly undocumented immigrants across the border. That's a big part of his success. He talked about DOGE, getting the government restrained and overspending under control, which was a dramatic effort we experienced the first 2 quarters of the year, and certainly inflation, doing something about pocketbook issues. The president's talked about it on the campaign. He talked about it in the inaugural, and he certainly talked about it at the end of the year. Is it something that turned quickly enough? I think a lot of families are in a wait-and-see mode. And that's why the president's coming out so forcefully. But he's also initiated efforts like building and manufacturing in America again, supporting the war fighters with the technology they need, getting a grasp of AI as it changes our economy and the global economy. So the president's put the economy and the U.S. domestic policy first. And
Joel,
I think that's what we're seeing.
Do you agree that the reason why the president is coming out so forcefully is because we're in a wait-and-see mode?
I think the president's coming out forcefully is because he only knows one speed, which is coming out forcefully. Donald Trump does not know how to change speeds, and I think that's why the American people are feeling some turbulence right now. This is a president that had a relatively short honeymoon. Actually, DOGE kind of marked the end of that pretty brief honeymoon, and I would say similar to how Joe Biden's kind of failed withdrawal from Afghanistan was kind of the break-even point where Biden's presidency really started to falter. I'd argue that DOGE kind of going into the summer, and then you have the Epstein files saga, that felt like that was the point where, combined with the economy not recovering fast enough for the American people, President Trump's economic ratings and his overall ratings really took a dip. If you look at public opinion polling, I saw Anthony Salvanto on last night, and that's actually where you can kind of mark the line of demarcation. So, look, the president has 3 more years. I wouldn't say that any president can't change their fortunes, but the thing that this president is fighting is the fact that his instincts are to keep doing the things that are unpopular and keep doing the things that are creating some of these economic challenges.
Sort of doubling down. I mean, Joel, you mentioned the Epstein files. Leslie, in the past few months, we've seen Republican lawmakers break ranks with the president on this and health care. What's happening inside the party?
I think the party is learning how to adjust to where their agenda is under the president's leadership. He is again focused on border and security. He's focused on the economy. He's focused on AI, certainly tariffs, infrastructure, building America again. And I think the White House would call and has called a lot of that distractions. But it kind of going back to Joel's point, whether it's a dip, people want to see a response on the economy sooner rather than later. And it was important for the president, any president, to come out at the end of the year and get ahead of that.
Joel, Democrats started 2025 needing to do some soul searching. They needed to rebuild. But then we saw Zohran Mamdani win in New York City. We saw wins on the gubernatorial side in Virginia and New Jersey. Do you think that they have the wind at their back right now, or do they still have some rebuilding to do?
What, a bad year for Democrats? Come on, Lindsay. No, Democrats had a great year. I'm just teasing. Look, as any political party, and I've said this many times, Lindsay, any political party going with a loss the scale of Democrats faced in 2024, this was going to be a tough year. I was actually talking to a colleague recently, and I was saying where Democrats are in their life cycle right now is about on schedule with what I would expect. They're doing the work to try to rebuild trust with voters. They are making space for new leaders and new voices to come out, people like Zohran Mamdani, Mikey Sherrill, Abigail Spanberger, all across the political spectrum for Democrats. And they are starting to figure out how to get their footing underneath them to counter Donald Trump and Republicans, which has been a challenge for Democrats over really the last decade. So the Democratic Party, to me, is on schedule for where they need to be. The proof will be in the pudding. We'll see what happens in 2026. We'll see what happens in the midterms. And of course, you have to build a national project to win back some of those voters that you lost in 2024 and 2028.
To be continued. Leslie Sanchez and Joel Payne, thank you both.